without any further ado, Anthony, we might turn over to you for get us underway.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. So the idea of this webinar is really to give you some tips and tools so you know what we're talking about when we're talking about doing these virtual tours. That's the subject of this. We want you to be able to go away. We believe schools more than ever before have to keep their tours going. They just have to, because it's the number one way that families find about your school, find out more information about your school. And if your campus is physically closed because of the COVID-19 pandemic, which I understand most schools are, they certainly are all closed here in the US. How do you go about sharing great stuff about your school? And so Greg and I have put together a set of guidelines on what we think is best practices, and we want to take you through that. And of course, there's a whole lot of how this works with Enquiry Tracker as well. So we're going to show you a bit of that, but by no means is it like you have to have Enquiry Tracker. We just think it's a great combination. So we're going to sort of go through this with you and explain it all. And I'll start off by just giving a bit more background about myself. If you don't know me, yes, you're right. Greg and I are both brothers. I've been living in the US now for almost 30 years, and I've worked in high tech in Silicon Valley. I've worked at Apple, Adobe. I've worked at satellite companies. I've run marketing teams. And
in terms of my experience, I've done 36 years in the education and not-for-profit sector. As a teacher, initially, director of marketing, been on many boards. Last 20 years, been publishing an education journal in the space, and also working with a lot of schools in marketing, philanthropy, alumni engagement, and building and managing their marketing and enrolment plan. So it's about 3 years ago, Anthony and I got together and said, how do we join forces a little bit, and how do we have a marketing solution for schools using an IT platform? Hence, Enquiry Tracker was born. But you know, a lot of people I've recognised on the platform on the session today, we're very collegiate. We want to share a lot of our knowledge. We don't want to hold on to it. So really, for us, we know that lifeline of every school is future enrolments. Schools need to focus in this space on marketing comms more than ever before. We've got, let's say we're a school with 100 staff, and we are now doubled down on how to do remote learning. Well, guess what? Parents are watching and listening and have literally stepped into the secondary school classroom and the primary school classroom. So they are there every day now watching, once these enroll in term 2, watching how these classes are being delivered. The marketing and branding of your school has never been more important. And if we are locked down for term 2 and term 3, parents still need to choose a school for their students. And they're looking around and saying, where do I send my kids next year or the year after? And what's really extraordinary has happened, and this is perhaps the positive side of COVID, if there is one, is I know I've become a bit more time, I was always time poor, and I'm a bit more time rich. I'm actually spending more quality time with my family because we're all stuck at home together. And conversely, I have to reach out using my computer. So I have to use my computer to search for information. So I've become a bit more time rich. Our tours need to keep going, and school tours have been the proven method of conversion. So what to do? So the first reaction was to perhaps say, well, we can't do school tours. We would say, historically, we know that school tours are a huge asset for us to get people. Right now, we can't do on-site tours, whether they're discovery tours, open days, or group tours, whatever you want to call them. We can't do one-on-one personal tours, and in many cases, campuses might be closed. We can still do remote tours. And what do we mean by remote tours? Well, we can double down on video tours, and some of you might already have a 90-second or a 2-minute video that you've already got or are trying to make. There are things like 360 tours where you can take photos of your the school and click on things and zoom around them. They're all okay, but you can also do live meeting and remote tours, which is what we're really going to encourage you to do. And why? What are the pros and cons of video? Well, video is great. You should have videos of your school, and you should make them. We're not suggesting that should be stopped. They're easy to access, and they provide great content and a great overview of your school. But what are they not? They can't be interactive. You can't interact with a video. You may not have one handy, so you might have to make one. And right now, what is the community wanting to do? They are stuck at home. They are yearning. They are desperate to interact and have a conversation with your schools. let me double underline this point. These issues of remote tours or video tours are not mutually exclusive. You can do both. All right, I'm going to show you how.
Yeah, that's a good point. We're not advocating not doing them. If you've got a video tour, that's great. You should use it. And there's a couple of other ideas that we wanted to share with you as tips. Google have got this virtual tour builder that you can use at arvr.google.com, tour creator. Check it out, and it might be a way for you to build one of those virtual tours that Greg was talking about before, where they can sort of interact and visit the campus and zoom around and, things like that, which is interesting. You could use a presentation program like Apple's Keynote or Microsoft PowerPoint and include assets that you've got already, photos of the school, video snippets. You can use those photos moving across and narration over the top or days. That's another great way to sort of get a bit more immersive solution. Or if you do have campus access and you're permitted to get back on campus, these smartphones today have amazing cameras in them and pretty good audio. If you want to interview the principal on campus, you don't have to have the high-end gear. I think people really want to know that you're there for them and they hear from you and it's honest and it's open. And I think if you use these technologies you have in your pocket, you're going to be good. All I recommend is just get a Bluetooth headset and the microphone in those is going to be fine, and they can just talk to someone holding a smartphone and you'll be pretty impressed with the quality that you get. And they can also walk around, give a tour and comment on the tour. And you could put something together that's pretty remarkable. The tip that we want to give you is think about how you can involve your own students in these projects. What if you were to ask a group of students to come together and say, hey, could you use this Google tour to create a virtual tour of our school? Or can you build this PowerPoint? Or, hey, we're going to shoot the principal. You're going to come over to, where the principal's going to visit your house or whatever, and you're going to shoot it, or you figure out those sorts of things. But I think there's some creative ways to have your kids involved even when they're off campus. What do we mean by virtual tours? Often people think that's just something remote I'm looking at. We actually really mean like a live meeting. And so by that, I mean, imagine you're all in the same room, talking to looking at each other across the table. And on the screen on the right, we're using Zoom. And this product that you see on the screen right now, we're using it in a webinar mode where you get to see Greg and we're on thumbnails on your screen, and you get to see what I'm looking at on my screen. But we can't see you. We can't really talk to you. We'd have to unmute you and a lot of different things. So we like the idea of a live meeting. Imagine having a tour and you got 20 families and you can see them all. You can see mum and dad and maybe the kids even there, and you can talk to them. You can actually have a two-way discussion if you choose to do that. We like them because it demonstrates to these families that you are completely accessible, that you're not just hiding behind a microphone broadcasting out, marketing content. They get to know you firsthand. They get to hear your voice. They get to hear your answers to their questions, not some other standard question. And they can engage with you. And of course, in that presentation, and we'll cover a sample outline, is you could be showing any of those assets that you've got, whether it's a slide deck or whether it's a video or some photographs. You can go ahead and share those particular items. So you're probably thinking, okay, that's great. How does this work? Is it really hard to do? Is it possible for anyone to do it? Well, before I get into, I'm going to do the Zoom part of it. And we love Zoom. Greg and we use it every day, and I think it's awesome. I'm going to have Greg sort of take us back a step, because the comment he made earlier about most of the leads, most of your inquiries will come through your website. They still will come through your website. So we're going to wind back just a step.
Yeah, and I think this is really important. This is Farn School in Tasmania, who actually happens to be one of the Enquiry tracker schools, but that's not the point I'm making here. Beautiful home image. The website's going to be more important than ever before, because that's how school parents were going to come and look. And make no mistake, there is one purpose for your website, and that is to capture future leads. So that's the number one goal of your website. Your parents should be accessing your school via a parent portal. And most of you have got that running, and if you don't, well, okay. But the number one goal is leads, and you've got to make it super easy for people to find things. We know when we've looked at the data across Enquiry Tracker, and we've got 100 schools now using Enquiry Tracker with, if I just look at the last 50,000 records, for example, that are being stored in it, and it's all anonymised data, I know that inquiries come in 4 ways. People I want to come to an open day or a school tour or a discovery day, whatever you call it. I can't come to that. I'd like to have a one-on-one with the director of admissions, please, a personal tour. Do you offer that? Some schools do, some schools don't. I don't want to register for a tour. I don't want to come to an open day. I would like a prospectus or an information pack of some description, or I don't want any of that. I just want to ask a question. Does your school teach Japanese or whatever it is? And we know that all of those inquiries have to funnel into one central repository and be captured. And at Enquiry Tracker, we offer you forms for all of those things to capture the data into one beautiful central repository. When we look at the data, this is what it tells us. The data tells us that 94% of all inquiries come from a website inquiry. They get on there and they fill out a form. And only 2% is in person, 2% is over the phone, and 1% is in email. Notice fax is gone. So this is how people are requesting information generally. And the website would also capture social media that's being pushed to your website. That's what the data tells us. This is going to go from 94% to 99.99% under COVID. So what we'd be wanting to make sure is your website set up to capture information that people want. So if we use the phone example, maybe once upon a time it was register for open day, but now it's register for a virtual tour. And if you click that button, that would be front and center on the website. Yes, you can register for a virtual tour. And notice the top right-hand corner, these little icons that are appearing. You know, I'd like a prospectus, I'd like to register for open day, I'd like to apply online, whatever they are. These icons are on every single page of their website. This is another great tip. So make it easy to find information, and we know what they want. They're looking for these easy to find things. So front and center, that's a big tip for everyone to use.
Great. So how do you go about registration, getting people to register? So now we're going to get into the real heart of the presentation, but I thought it was really important for you to understand the point we're trying to get across, make it easy for them to sign up. So they've got to fill out some form. So you could use a third party, you could build your own. Obviously, many of you have your own forms on your website. But if you're going to be signing up for a virtual tour, it's got to be really integrated. You're going to have to use a third party like Zoom, like Google Meet, or like Microsoft Teams or something. And if you've got those products, they'll all work, right? But you really want a way to capture the right sort of information you need, right? And so I'm going to give you a couple of examples, and I'll talk about the sorts of data we think you should capture and why it's critical. I'm going to give you an example of this school in Chapel Hill in the USA. You can see they've got on the April the 3rd at 3:30, they've got a live Q&A series, right? And I know that these are webinars. I had a look at their website earlier, and you can see that someone clicking on that view registration button would go to this page. They click register here, and they're going to be given this webinar registration form. So this is a webinar registration. This is the same form that you would have filled out to join this particular meeting, right? So this is this style where they've got a number of talking heads talking out and presenting. Nothing wrong with it. It's good to do, but you can see it'll only have a limited number of fields that I'm going to fill in: my first name, last name, email address, and you can configure this to maybe have another 6 or so fields, but there's not things like what's the name of your student and how old is your student and when are they going to start in the class, So there's some other data that is not necessarily there. So what's nice about these is, and look, we love Zoom, and I think every one of you should be using it. It's incredibly easy to set up, and it's free for schools. So if you're not using it, you should use it, especially if your school district or your school permits you to do it. As I mentioned in the example, the con is that you're limited on that data capture for your pipeline, and it's not designed for nurturing relationships. So Greg and I were thinking, well, what could we do? We think schools have got to double down. They've got to keep their tours going. What could we do? We think virtual tours are a great idea. And we realized that, you know what, having Zoom coupled with the Enquiry Tracker is actually a killer combination, because you get the best of Zoom, right? You get to do those live meetings or webinars if you choose, but we advocate the live meetings. And you get to build that relationship. So we're going to walk you through this. I'm going to take you through a few screenshots. And again, if you've got any questions, type them into the Q&A section, and Greg will be monitoring those. And we'll just try to make sure that we answer them for you, especially as we go through this next few slides. So how do you go about running your virtual tour? Well, I want to we're going to go through these different 5 phases where you create the tour, you register, how do you communicate with them before it, you run your tour, and then you follow up, because it's the entire experience, right? We think it's this experience that schools have to have. We want you to not only engage, we want you to amaze your future families. And we think this is critical. We think if schools adopt this, they're going to be a much stronger position in 6 months and definitely in 12 months from now, because families will still need to select a place to have their children educated, even if they're sequestered at home, okay? So what does this really mean? So the first thing is, if you haven't already, you go to Zoom, there's a honking big button that says sign up for free. You sign up, and once you've got your account, you can go in and then you just say, schedule a meeting. It's literally that hard, schedule a meeting. You enter in the information. So in this example, I've entered virtual school tour. I said it's on May the 15th at 9 a.m. And I'm just going to schedule it. I can set a few parameters. I want the video to be on. I want participants' video to be on when it comes on. I can mute this. I can do that. I can schedule it. Once I've done that, I just copy the meeting link. So it's really as easy as 1, 2, 3, right? You just go into Zoom, create your meeting, set the key parameters, and copy the link. And I will give you some tips as well. One super important tip: with a meeting, you can have families register for it, but we don't recommend you do that. We just recommend anyone can access. But when you copy that link, that means anyone with a link could join your meeting. So don't share that meeting link on a public social network or just on your website. Don't do that. Only provide it directly to the people via an email or some other means, so that they know that they're the only ones that have got it. It's just an important tip. I'll reference Zoom bombing once. You can Google it and you can read about the different things that people recommend that you do. And we'll gladly help any of you with those tips as well. So now that you've got your Zoom meeting actually scheduled and set up, you want to know, well, how do people go about registering for it? Well, remember Greg was saying, put it front and center. So if I was to click one of the buttons here or click a register for our virtual tour, I would then get a form that I would fill in. And the reason why I'm showing it, this is an Enquiry Tracker form. I will demonstrate this to you shortly. But here's what you have to know as a school. You've got to not only capture the key information of the parent, like their name and address and email and phone, but you really want to know the future student. What's their name? What enrollment year level would they be starting in? What intake year, like year 7? And you also want to control which fields are absolutely required, and we can recommend which ones we think, but you obviously need a parent and guardian. You want to know their contact info, like their email, so you can communicate with them. And you really need to have a student, and you should have the year of entry and year level they're going to start at, because that feeds your pipeline. And then you know how to communicate with them. If you know what year they're coming in at kindergarten, you don't send an email about coding camp, right? But you might have about some sort of fun art day at the school. So if the more you know about your future pipeline, the smarter you are when it comes to marketing. And since they're going to be remote, this is now more critical than ever. And of course, we always advocate things like pop-up lists. So if you wanted to know a student's current school, there could be a current school list. And you can do all of those things certainly easily by pointing and clicking in Enquiry Tracker. So once they fill out that form, what's going to happen? You've got to send them an email. And when you send that automated, it's got to be automated. So here's an example of one that would be sent. So, dear Nick, thanks for registering for our virtual school tour. With the current restrictions in place, we're offering a Q&A session with our staff along with our virtual tour of our campus. Please join us on May the 15th. Here's the link to the meeting, right? That is all automated, right? So it's gone into that person's email, but not only has it gone into the email, you need to also send a calendar invite. Why would you want to do that? Well, the reason to do that is because not always people are not always constantly checking back on their email saying, now, when did I have that?
And I might just jump in here because you've frozen the last 15 or so seconds. So just pause over here. So right now we're advocating send a personalized email with the Zoom link in it and with a calendar invite. And remember, they might be registering, 1 month before the event. So it would be really, really good to send a friendly reminder 1 or 2 days before, again, because people do forget and things like that. The beautiful thing about it, and I don't want to oversell this thing here, is all this is handled in the Enquiry Tracker. This is all automated for you and it's personalised. And you can write whatever script you want in these emails. I'll hand back to Anthony because I think your audio is back for us now.
Well, you might have some ideas on this one, Greg, certainly about the
Sure.
The pre-tour and being ready in the agenda, because I thought you had some good comment on this earlier.
So this is about, of course you've sent out your thank you for registering email, which is very nice, and it's all on brand, and it's all gone out, it's all personalised. You've sent the calendar invite, you've sent a friendly reminder, but of course you don't just start the tour on the day. You've got to be brand ready. So what's the background look like? It looks all nice. So the dogs, you're going to be doing it from home, and and Anthony's the principal, and I'm the director of admissions, let's say. So let's make sure the dogs are locked up in the front room and the kids have been warned, don't come and disturb us. We're dressed nicely. We're appearing freshly shaved, and we're good to go. And let's have an agenda. So I might do a welcome, and I'm going to throw to Anthony, who's going to do a principal's address, and he's got a PowerPoint slide deck that principals love to show in these discovery tours, and he can show it and walk through it. And he might hand back to me to say a few more things about the enrolment process. And then we can ask some Q&A and go live. And if we've got a little video of the school, we can say, we're going to now play you a 90-second video. Here it is, press play. And then, this is super. And what I would do is just off camera, I would have one other person, just as people were checking into the meeting, be checking them in and recording that they attended. And of course, after the event, you'd love to, on the day, you would make sure you switched on your Zoom about 10 minutes early, which we did. You'd go over the housekeeping, telling people to mute their screens, et cetera, mute their audio rather, and then you start running the tour. And then at the end of the tour, after it's done, you want to follow up. I'm going to hand back to Anthony to what's the follow-up look like.
Yeah, let's go through a few screens first. So once you've started your tour, Greg mentioned those housekeeping items, and I just want to show you, this is a screenshot of like my Zoom screen, the outer, the bar across the bottom. That's what my screen looks like when I first set up Zoom, and I'm about to start. When I hit share, I'll hit this button in the middle, and I can share my screen, which is now what you're looking at as a keynote presentation. If I wanted to stop my video, I just have to hit the stop video button. If I want to mute my mic, this is what I have, these types of buttons on my Experience to turn them on and off quickly. Likewise, this is the gallery view. So this view, this is what we actually advocate. I like it because if I was a principal and Greg was director of admissions and we had 20 families that we were presenting to, I could see the 20 families. And guess what? They could all see one another, right? And they could sort of see other families that are interested in sending their kids to your school, right? So I think it promotes this sense of community, and also demonstrates how real you are as a school, how you care about the community, and the lengths you're going to go to educate people about your school. You can toggle this view between a speaker view. So in other words, if you're an attendee at this meeting and the principal was talking and I really wanted to focus on that principal, I could just click that speaker view button and that's all I'm going to see, right? And I'll see a big picture of the principal talking away. So that's the nice thing about that. When I share my screen, if I click that, I just get to pick which screen I want to share. So if you've got 2 monitors, you can pick which monitor that you want to share. So that'll show you and it'll also show you if you've got several files that are open at the same time. It'll show you any one of those that you can share, and just practice a few times first with some local staff members that are remote and double check it so you feel confident with it. There is a ton of training on Zoom on their website, but look, I can't emphasize, it is ridiculously easy to use. I find it incredibly easy.
Anthony, your audio is broken up a little bit. If just pause for a moment. I'm just going to take a couple of questions that have come in on lots of Q&A questions coming in. I'm just going to answer a couple while Anthony pauses for a moment. How long would you suggest to run a virtual tour for, from Suzanne? I would suggest a virtual tour like this, a meeting. I'd keep it to under an hour. 45 minutes to an hour is plenty. It's a lot to ask people to sit there for 90 minutes or so. We're going to try to keep our webinar to under an hour. So, I think that's enough. A couple of other people have asked around costs for Enquiry Tracker. We'll cover that off at the end. Who and how many staff would you suggest to be in the tour? I think at least 2. I would think the director of admissions and the principal. People want to speak to the boss and they want to hear about the enrolment process. So I definitely think of those. Hey, why not have the school captain there too? The school captain's at home. Let's hear from the kids. So, I'd be often, don't be afraid. People love speaking about their schools. You could have a parent talking about the parent experience. You can mix it up a bit. I'll just hand back to Anthony for a moment because I think his audio's come back okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of creative things you can do, and that's what I encourage you most. Be creative. Think differently. This is the time to step up and do it. Another tip is on this little upward carrot icon next to the share screen. When I click on that, I'm going to be presented with this option with who can share. And so when you do live meetings, it's the nature of a meeting, and someone says, hey, Greg might say, hey, look, I've got some stuff I'd like to share. He can just go and share whatever's on his screen. So when you're running a live meeting with people that you don't know, you want to just be careful who can share. So we recommend that you just consider only allowing the host to share the core content. That doesn't have to be the principal. This could be the director of admissions, that's the architect orchestrating this live meeting session. And then that way all the content is going to be shared off one computer. Much, much safer and much smarter when you have public meetings. The last thing I want to show you quickly is if you want, as the host of a meeting, you can mute everybody instantly. If I just click on this Manage Participants button and I hit Mute All, microphones will be instantly turned off, right? Again, it's if you've got a virtual tour, and let's say you've got 20 families, and you start to hear the rumblings of dogs barking and car doors and things, background noise that start to become a bit irritating that other people can't hear everything, hit the Mute All button, and then everything goes quiet for everyone else. Only whoever the host will be the person that they can hear at that time. Okay. All right. So I'm keeping an eye on my clock here. We're right at the halfway mark, and so I thought, Greg, you might want to just go over this sort of sample agenda that you've covered at a high level, and then we'll go through the email, the follow-up steps.
So if this was your 45-minute virtual tour, we do a welcome, thank you. We go over all the housekeeping. As people, if we started this 10 minutes before the session, and we can remember we can cap registrations as well. So you might want to cap it to say, well, I don't want to have 100 people on my screen. I want to cap it at 25. And, we can have set caps in Enquiry Tracker. You do your introductions. Hi, welcome. The Smith family's just joined us. Welcome. Lovely to join us. We'd do a welcome. I'd hand to the principal, who might then do a slideshow. If we can go outside, we would walk outside or play a video. We can leverage those assets like Anthony spoke about, photos and videos. Then I would definitely conduct a Q&A session. I'd definitely be throwing to parents to say, look, have you got any questions? And you might have to lead them a little bit. They might be shy. So have you got any questions about our sporting program? Have you got any questions about our extracurricular program? Oh, yeah, I do actually. So you've got to bring them to the water to make them confident to ask questions, because they get a bit nervous. And then, of course, make sure that you have a final call to action. Don't just end the tour and say thanks. Make sure you have thanks and this is what we would like to do. Have a call to action, which is probably enroll your child. And then you do your follow-up. I'll hand it back over to Anthony for the follow-up.
Yeah, so with after you've now done your event, you've finished, you've told them the call to action. you really can't stop at that. You've got to say, okay, who are the people that attended and what are we going to do? Well, you want to send them an email, say, thanks. Maybe here's a free question out, or here's a link to the application to download, etc. For those that couldn't make it, because not everyone can make it, something's come up, maybe you send them an email saying, hey, sorry we missed you. Here's a link to our next virtual tour. Looks like my internet might be a bit unstable again. Anyway, the other thing we recommend is don't just stop at emails, call them. You know, if you're capturing their phone number, call them, because they would love to hear from you, all right? And so I highly encourage you to do that. So remember I showed you these 5 things at the start. So you make sure your virtual tour is visible, easily accessible on your homepage. Highly recommend it in the header of every page. Tip number 1. Make sure you've created in Zoom or your live meeting program of choice. Make sure you have a form that you're asking the right questions, right, that we mentioned earlier on. When they do fill out that form, they get this thanks for registering, include a calendar invite and a Zoom link. Make sure they get the reminder email so they don't forget. And all of you will be able to deliver an amazing virtual tour using Zoom. I know that you've got the great content. Have someone following up on the registration list to see who attended, and you can check them in to make sure they get the right thanks for attending or sorry we missed you email. And then another thing I thought that would be interesting, if you were to capture maybe their address on that web form, you could send them mail. So if you've got a young elementary school program and you know these families are struggling at home because they're trying to keep these kids engaged, well, what if you sent them a nice little pack of crayons and some coloring books as a gift from the school? Shows you care, all right? Messages on brand. All right, so on that note, Greg, I think we're right on track. I'd like to start off by doing a quick demo of Enquiry Tracker and Zoom and how it would work together. And I'm going to start off by showing you, I'm just going to click on this school here. And Greg, can you just confirm that you can see the Oakley Grammar school page?
Yes, we can. And Oakley Grammar are an Enquiry Tracker school and doing some good work in this space. So as Anthony scrolls down the screen, just talk us through what's going on, Ant.
Well, you can see they've got right front and center on their hero section of their website, school tours and open days, discover Oakley Grammar, right? So I click on this button and now I'm going to go to, guess what? Their registration form. So it's got an explanatory text that say, hey, look, due to the COVID, this is what's going on. All open days are going to be postponed. But guess what? You can actually sign up for a virtual open day right here on the 22nd of April. They're going to be running it. And here's the form. Of course, this happens to be an Enquiry Tracker form. You can see they want a primary contact, a secondary contact. They want to know if the address, and then they've got all the student information. You can see they've got a lot of questions they're asking about the student. Not only are they adding the year level of entry, they're asking about the current school, they're asking about the interests and learning programs that they offer. So if there's any special marketing campaigns that they can run, they're asking these questions, all right? And so, of course, if I was to fill out this form and I hit submit, it would go into Enquiry Tracker and the family would get an email saying, here's the information about our virtual tour, right? So let's take you through that process. I'm going to go back over here to...
I'm just going to jump in and answer a couple of questions just before you demonstrate. A couple of schools have just asked about Zoom security. There's a lot of very easy to lock down Zoom to prevent any regarding the security issues. There's a whole paper that we can show you about how to do that. It's very easy to do. Again, you can lock down, you control what people say, you can stop them sharing their screen, you can do all sorts of things. One other question, a person said, does the participant, the parent, need to have Zoom as well? No, they just click on the link. All right, so that's fine.
Yeah, let me explain, just so you know what happens is when they click on the link, it'll do it a simple Zoom app gets downloaded and it runs, or they can run it straight in their browser. I've never had a problem with it.
Okay, let's keep going. I think I've answered most of the questions. Thanks, cheers.
Okay, so we've got this school called St. Trinian's. I'm just going to go down this dashboard here and I'm going to focus on one particular area. I've got a virtual school tour on the 3rd of April, and you can see that I've got 140 RSVPs here. And what we're going to do is we're going to we're going to register for this event, right? So I'm going to go over to this website running out of our data centers in Sydney on Google's cloud infrastructure in Sydney, Australia. But this is in the US, this site, and you can see there's the virtual tour. And I'm going to fill in this information, and Greg is going to just sort of talk you through it. And I'm going to use Barack Obama as the example, Greg.
Okay, so we've got a virtual, Enquiry Tracker allows you to have unlimited upcoming events, and you can call them what you like. You can see certain fields have been turned on and certain fields have been turned off. Certain things have got a red star next to them. You can control this sort of thing. Anthony's typing in, the parent being Barack Obama. He's the father. He's he's put in his email. He's put in his mobile phone. This has got address visible here, so he's popping in the address, which I think is, you know, the address he's putting in Melbourne for a moment. I think you might have just on the mobile phone number, Anthony, if you want to just go back and fix the mobile phone number, just a little refresher on that one. Okay, so if we go further down the page, again, you can control which fields are being visible. We've decided we want to know the first name of the child, and we'd like to know what year of enrolment. And of course, if you were using our form as opposed to your own, and you were a year 7 to 12 school, well, year 5 would not display there. And if you were a Peter 13 school, would have Peter 13. We've chosen not to display what's your current school and what's your current school year. We are asking this little question: is this the first time visiting our school? That's nice, yeah, it is. And what made you consider our school? Well, Facebook campaign, you know, or something, whatever Anthony selected there. This is very important because this does catering. And this is good for getting a total RSVP to your audience. So he's registering for 2 people. If he hasn't missed any of the red stars, he'll get a successful submission. If he missed some, he'll get a warning saying, "Oh, you didn't answer certain things." A whole bunch of stuff is about to happen. So remember, Anthony was pretending to be on a website of your school.
Right.
And
so we filled. I'm sorry, Greg. Go on.
No, you go. It's fine.
So we filled out that information. Remember, we entered Barack Obama and we added RSVP for 2 people. Remember, this was sitting at 140. This is the virtual tour that I registered for. It's 140. All I'm going to do is I'm just going to refresh this, and I should expect this jump up to 110, 109, and 142. All right, because I got 1 student, one family, and 2 RSVPs. Right. So if I scroll down, you'll see, sure enough, I've now jumped up my number by 1 here and by 2 here. Is that right?
Yeah, and so this is what you're looking at is what your staff would look at, your principal, your director of admissions, your head of marketing. And we're not trying to give you a full demonstration of Enquiry Tracker. That's not the purpose of today. We're just trying to say there's a bunch of stuff occurring. If I want to look at this particular event, and I could look at any event that we've ever run forever, or any event that I've got coming up in the future, you can see it's a virtual school tour. It's scheduled to go on the 3rd of the 4th. I've got a cap of 200 here. It's going to run for 1 hour. I can control the cap. I've got a little bit of a descriptor, and I've got 111 students, 143 families. I've got 110 families coming along, and I've got a whole lot of people being registered today. And if Anthony said, "Well, you know, what's this person's name?" Because this could be 1,000 families, it could be 50 families, it could be 25 families. The person's name was Barack Obama, and there he is, registered for his daughter Malia. And we demonstrated Michelle Obama before. So basically, when this person registered, called Barack, this record has been added to this event. A record has been created for the father, a record has been created for the daughter. As we scroll down the page, you can see he would have got a thank you for registering email, and this is what he would have received. It would have said, "Dear Barack," because Anthony told you to make sure you send a thank you for registering email, and this is what it would go. And you can type anything you like there. "Dear Barack," blah, 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 blah. There's the Zoom link. That's the Zoom link that Anthony said, don't publish just on your website, put it in your email. That's the Zoom link that they will get. And this email, the way we've built the system, will also go with a calendar invitation, and that Zoom link will be in the calendar invitation. And this will go immediately. Look, send immediately after registration, and it's based on whatever time zone your school is in. So if Anthony exits that, one other tip he told you is make sure you send a friendly reminder email. We've set ours to go 1 day prior. You can do it 2 or 3 days prior, whatever you want. And that will go out one day prior to AM, gives them a friendly reminder. Don't forget, you've registered for our virtual tour tomorrow at whatever time it was, at 12 o'clock. Don't forget to come along. And that's a nice friendly jolt you're giving them. Oh, that's right, I did register for that. I nearly forgot. That's great. Now it's the day of the event and you've got your tour all nicely prepared and you're going to run your virtual tour. You've opened up your Zoom meeting, you're ready to go, and people are starting to come along, and now you can check them in. So you could have one person on the Enquiry tracker screen and you on the Zoom screen, and they can be checking people in. And how do you check people in, Anthony? I'll give it back to you.
Well, you know, you can do this live while someone's doing it, or you could do it right after the event, because you'll have all the registrants and you know who attended and who didn't. So you can quickly scan the list. You could just sort this by alphabetical order. And I could just scan down this list, and I have my registrant list in alphabet, and I just run through and I go, oh yeah, you know, this person turned up, and I can just mark them off. And when I mark them off, how many they said is RSVPing. In this case, Michelle Dunn said there's going to be 4 of them attending the virtual meeting. It doesn't matter so much for virtual, but at least it knows you've got some sense of maybe how many participants there were. But it's a nice thing to do. When I click on that, you'll see it tells you how many that attended the event. So this is great, obviously, when you have on-site tours, when you really need to know about catering, or if you've got giveaways that you want to hand out, you can really cater accordingly. So you would do that. Or if you need to quickly find someone, I could just turn that off, and I'll look at, again, I'll just do the Obama family, and I could just say, oh yeah, there's Barack Obama. We can check them in. There was 2 of them that turned up, and there they are, they've checked in. And if I had Michelle, I've got another 2, now it's 4. And so you just, this way, once they're checked in, after the event, so you can see 2 days after, we've got this email that's going to go and say, hey, on behalf of our school, thank you so much for attending our virtual tour. It was a great success, etc. Maybe you could do that 3-question survey, add a link to the survey, or click here to download the enrollment package and fill it out, you know, that sort of thing, right? And of course, for the ones that didn't make it, just follow up, have it automatic. So when they follow up, have a link to your next virtual tour. So they sign up for that one, or say, hey, just hit reply if you want, and I'll add you to our next virtual tour. And when you add them inside Enquiry Tracker, they'll get all the information as well. All right. So you can see how once you've conducted that virtual tour, how you use the tool to do that engaged communications with your future families. Can't emphasize this enough. The other thing you can do is just, obviously all their phone numbers are stored in here. This is where you can go in and start calling them. Say, hey, thanks for attending our virtual tour last week. I wanted to be here to see if you've got any questions. We'd love to have you come to our school next year, even though it's virtual, etc., etc. You know what to do in that particular area. All right. So let's say I'll show you. I wanted to cover a couple of other things, Greg, as well. After you've done the tour and we've done the.
Okay. So what we want to do is so we've gone through the sequence. The Barack Obama family, they registered on your website. They filled out the form, whether it's an Enquiry Tracker form or some other form. They've filled it all out. They've hit submit. It's come to you. You've sent them a thank you email with the Zoom link. You send them a reminder. They've come on the day. You've checked them in, so you've got a full record. And do you notice on the top of that little screen there, there's this donut? It's the donut of returning families, 48 first-time families, and 27 unknown. Do you remember that question that Anthony had on the web form? Is this the first time you're visiting our school? And if you make that compulsory, then guess what? You know how many families, and that could be really interesting, because let's say you ran a tour for 20 families and they were all returning families, you'd probably change the tour. You'd probably do it differently. And again, if this was a physical tour and you brought them to your campus, you might split the tour group into 2. So you might say, hey, the returning families are going to go with our principal, and the first-time family is going to go with our director of admissions. Of course, you can know instantly who they are, because we can sort the list, but in that way. I want you to suspend disbelief for a moment and come back to the phone rings, and it's now 4 weeks on from the virtual tour. You've sent the thank you email, and you've sent the sorry we missed you email to another family who didn't come along, and the phone rings and it's Barack Obama on the phone. I'd be pretty wrapped if you rang me. And how can I help you? And it's about my daughter, Malia. All right. So and Anthony might just click on Malia for us. Now, remember I said when Enquiry Tracker, when you fill out a form, it's created a full profile for the daughter and a full profile for the family. He filled out these fields, Year 7, 2021, Malia and Obama. We didn't ask about address. We didn't ask about religion. We didn't ask about current school. We didn't ask about this other whole bunch of other things or any of their interests or anything like that. If we scroll further down the page and go to the activity log, you can see that the dad is Barack. And we can easily see in the activity log that he, on the 1st of April of 2020, they registered for a virtual tour. And remember, this tour actually hasn't happened yet. But if it did, it would say he came to it. And I could say, how can I help you? And he might say, we're chatting away. And he said, look, I'd really like a prospectus. I'd really like an information pack about this school. Would you be able to send me one? And I say, of course I can. Would you like me to send it to you via email right now? And of course we can do this. He says, that's fantastic. We're chatting away. And we go send a prospectus or whatever you call it. It can be anything you like. Make a little note. He's on the phone. So Anthony's just typing a little note. These notes can be edited, of course. And we're going to send him via email. He's on the phone. We're chatting away. So I'll record the fact that we're on the phone, hit save. And instantly the activity log will be updated and you can see it's done. And the note's been recorded. And of course, you can have unlimited activities and unlimited interactions. And if you go back to the dashboard, let's see what's happened on the dashboard. Because I'm now going to get Anthony to run through some analytics and show you some interesting things that are occurring. Back on the dashboard, I can see prospectuses are now 28. And we've sent one to Michelle Obama and Barack Obama because we just happen to be using those same names as demonstrations. We did a demonstration for New Zealand schools about a couple of hours ago. We use the same similar family. And those family groups can be joined together into one family unit. It's very easy. What I'm going to ask Anthony to do is just to walk through some of the top level analytics for you. I know I've got a couple of questions to answer, so I'm going to review those whilst Anthony's looking at the analytics.
Okay, so quickly, obviously when they're filling out those forms online or you're asking the questions like, how'd you hear about us? This is important for a director of marketing, someone who's really worried about the demand and understanding how are these families really hearing about us, and is it from some local advertisement, a newspaper article or whatnot? These are things that are important to capture. So we track all that stuff and report on it. We report on the demographics. I won't go over those into detail today because I think it's fairly self-explanatory. We think managing that funnel is really important, which is why you should always ask what calendar year and what intake year level they're going to start at, because this feeds your funnel so you know what your pipeline looks like, and it's going to be important for the next few years. Where are they at in that pipeline? What stage and how many kids? This is all about students. This is not about mum and dad. This is a student that represents an annual fee to you each year. And I think, the total value that a student represents is significant. And then you can obviously monitor your inquiries over time. You can see how you're going this year. You can compare it to last year, etc. All right. Likewise, we have events, but a lot of schools want to know, where are my kids coming from, right? If I look at right now, I've just got 2021, I could just go up and say all year levels. Like, where is the overall population of all the inquiries we've ever had? Where are they coming from for our school? And you can see what the distribution looks like. You could say, change the filter to say, hey, just show me those families that have decided they declined. They didn't want to come to our school. And you could see if there's a pattern. Are they all from a particular area? Things of that nature. And then the last one I wanted to show you is, it's often really important to understand not only the different types of schools, and you can classify your schools as public, private, faith-based, whatever. If they're feeder or non-feeder or in zone or out of zone, it's up to you. But importantly, if you're asking them, hey, what's your current school? You can see if there's certain patterns with certain schools of feeding more kids up into your upper level years, for example. That's something else that you should know as a marketer. That's the things that I wanted to go over, Greg.
I think if we close off, I know that some of the sound has been a bit unstable for a couple of the clients here. There's a customers here, rather. So there's a few questions I want to answer for people. So one of the questions was, at what point in the process does Enquiry Tracker stop, and can families submit and pay for applications? So the application module is being built right now and will be available to our customers and clients very soon. And so the answer will be yes in a very, very, very near future. And another one, another just a general question, Anthony, was, is this similar to Google Analytics, what we've just looked at?
No, no, not really. This is data you're collecting. It's sort of, imagine you're data mining all the form values that people fill out for you. Enquiry Tracker is integrated with Google Analytics. So if you're running a digital marketing campaign where you're spending money on Facebook ads or Google ads, and you're driving them to a virtual tour registration page, we integrate with Google Tag Manager. So you will get all the data and you will understand, hey, I spent X dollars on this campaign. How many leads did I get? And you can understand your cost per lead that way.
Speaking of cost, Anthony, lots of people would like to know about costs of Enquiry Tracker. So if we could just go to that slide. This is not supposed to be a full demo of Enquiry Tracker. It's more about, we've got a couple of close-off slides. There's a few questions I still need to answer. I'm conscious of everyone's time, that we promised that we'd finish at the top of the hour. So this is about, we want you to use virtual tours. Go out and do it straight away. You don't need Enquiry Tracker to do it. We'd love you to use Enquiry Tracker because we think it's a more holistic experience. We might wrap up now because there's about 30 schools still on board, but we're very conscious of your time.
Yeah, I think that's good.
You know, thank you so much for staying on for such a length of time. Really appreciate. Stay safe.
Stay healthy.
Shoot us a question, greg@enquirytracker.net, Anthony, without a H, at enquirytracker.net, and or if you forgot those, info@enquirytracker.net. So, you know, yeah. hopefully.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Greg.
Cheers, guys.
All right, stay safe. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.